not tolerate. Canada expels Chinese diplomat over intimidation plot. House intelligence leaders say Middle East want U.S. a greater role to counter CCP's influence. Hong Kong police seize Pillar of Shame statue for inciting subversion probe. CCP-controlled media condemns letter of protest from South Korean embassy.
Ottawa announced its expulsion of a Chinese diplomat accused of trying to target a Canadian politician critical of Beijing's treatment of its Uyghur Muslim minority. The announcement was made on May 8th, Reuters reported. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said Canada has decided to declare persona non grata Mr. Zhao Wei. According to Joly, this decision has been taken after considering all factors, but she added, "I have been clear, we will not tolerate any form of foreign interference in our internal affairs. Diplomats in Canada were warned that if they engage in this type of behavior, they will be sent home." As presented by Financial Times, this is Canada's first expulsion of a Chinese diplomat in decades. It comes after a report by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, that said Zhou targeted Michael Chong, a politician who sponsored a resolution in 2021 proclaiming China's oppression of its Uyghur Muslim people to be genocide. Prime Minister Trudeau previously claimed that he learned about the intelligence report via the newspaper and accused the spy agency of failing to inform him then. The agency has been instructed to share information regarding threats against lawmakers and their families immediately. Relations between Ottawa and Beijing are already tense since the detention of Huawei Technologies executive Meng Wanzhou in 2018 and China's subsequent arrest of 2 Canadians on spying charges. As Reuters said, the expulsion is expected to make China, Canada's second-largest trading partner, seek revenge.
During their congressional visit to the Middle East, U.S. lawmakers in the House Intelligence Committee say countries there want an increased U.S. role to counter the rising influence of the Chinese regime in the region. According to CNN, House Intelligence Chairman Mike Turner and Ranking Member Jim Himes spoke with CNN in an interview as the pair visited Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. Turner said, "They did all cite China's increased influence in the area as a need for the United States to step up its influence." Turner added, "So everyone is watching this very closely and seeing this as an opportunity for the United States to not only play a greater role for security, but also a greater role in keeping China at bay." The growing role of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, in the Middle East has raised Washington's concerns. In March, Beijing helped Iran and Saudi Arabia secure a landmark agreement, significantly easing regional tensions. While Saudi Arabia's relationship with the U.S. has recently been strained, the CCP's position with the country has risen. Last week, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy warned Israel of Chinese investment in the country in a speech before the Knesset, Israel's unicameral legislature, saying, "While the Chinese Communist Party may disguise itself as promoters of innovation, and, true, they act like seeds, we must not allow them to steal our technology." He added, "I strongly encourage Israel to further strengthen its oversight of foreign investment, particularly Chinese investment. The relationship between Washington and Beijing has deteriorated significantly over the past few years. The two countries have clashed over issues such as trade, human rights, and the origins of the COVID pandemic. Tensions soared after a high-profile visit by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan last year, and following a Chinese spy balloon infiltrating the U.S. sky earlier this year, leading Secretary of State Antony Blinken to call off his planned visit to China. Hong Kong's National Security Police have seized the Pillar of Shame, a monument commemorating people who died in the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown. According to local media, it is for an incitement to subversion investigation. The copper exhibit, with a height above 26 feet and weighing 2 tons, depicts dozens of torn and twisted bodies in memory of protesters killed in the crackdown in and around Tiananmen Square more than 3 decades ago. The police said in a statement, "The National Security Department conducted searches with a warrant this morning. An exhibit related to an incitement to subversion case was seized. However, police did not give details of who was accused of wanting to incite subversion using the statue, which was kept in storage at the University of Hong Kong campus for 24 years. Reuters reported that the seizure occurred on May 5th, weeks ahead of the June 4th anniversary of the crackdown. To remember the crackdown, Hong Kong had long hosted the world's largest annual vigils. The crackdown is taboo throughout the rest of China. From the beginning of 2020, Hong Kong's vigil, which had previously taken place in a city park, was outlawed due to coronavirus regulations. The sculpture's creator, Danish-born Jens Galschiot, claimed he was unaware of the police's seizure of the statue. He said in an email response to Reuters, "This is outrageous. This is my sculpture, and nobody has consulted or informed me about anything." Pillar of Shame was initially exhibited at a Tiananmen Square commemoration in Hong Kong in 1997. The same year, Britain returned control of the city to China. In 2021, the University of Hong Kong dismantled and removed the exhibit, based on external legal advice and risk assessment for the best interest of the university. Since then, it has been stored on university-owned property in a cargo container. The Global Times, a Chinese Communist Party, or CCP-controlled media outlet, on Monday, May 8th, condemned a letter of protest by South Korea's embassy in China. In its editorial, the CCP-controlled Global Times blasted the embassy's brutal interference in its independent reporting. In a letter to the Global Times last week, the South Korean embassy in China complained about the newspaper's unfounded criticism of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol in a series of unreasonable, slanderous articles after his recent trip to the U.S. The embassy said in the letter, "By using sensational, provocative, and inappropriate language, your papers disparaged our president, as well as the foreign policy of our government, aimed at bringing peace and stability to the region, and did so from an extremely biased viewpoint without objective evidence." The embassy added, "Some of the criticism levied at our president, using words so vulgar that they are barely repeatable, will make one wonder if they even come from news media at all. You have to put yourself in our shoes, and imagine how the Chinese public would react if South Korean media were to criticize the Chinese leader in similar ways." The editorial from the Global Times comes after Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida had a landmark visit to South Korea, the first by a Japanese Prime Minister to Seoul in 12 years. The newspaper warned that South Korea's recent move to close diplomatic relations with Japan and the US would induce and aggravate the collapse of the situation in Northeast Asia. The Global Times is known for its propagandistic nationalist narrative. It has repeatedly criticized South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol for blindly following the US. It also condemned Seoul for creating more tension in the Korean peninsula from its growing security connections with the US and Japan.